All right, everybody. Welcome to today's podcast episode. I do have a guest joining me today. I'll just give her a moment to accept our invite. Hopefully, it'll work this time. I hope you all are having a great day today. All right. I sent the invite. Okay, I see your face popped up. Alease Young wants to join. Bring them on camera. Add. All right. Is that and you on? Bring on camera. Okay. All
There
right.
we
I
go.
can see you. Can you see my
You can
whole
see me?
face?
Yes,
Yes. Can you see
I
my
can
whole
see you.
face? Good, good. Okay. Facebook is letting us be great today. All right. So welcome,
I
Miss
can. s-
Young. So happy to have you.
Yes, I'm glad to be here.
All
I
right.
was
So
trying
I'll
to
do
do
a
it
quick
on. I
go
was trying to
ahead.
do it on the laptop. I was trying to do it on the laptop, but that wasn't working. So I'm on my phone.
Okay. Yes, this works fine. I can see you good. All
Okay.
right. So I'll just do a quick intro and we'll hop straight into it. So welcome
Okay.
to the Mom Keys to Mental Peace podcast. I'm your host and sister in Christ, Tari Kaya Allen Butler, and this is a podcast for millennial moms who struggle with limiting beliefs and want to learn how to make over their mindsets and level up their lifestyle in faith, family, finances, and fitness. Tap in each week for the Mom Keys to Mental Peace podcast, where you will learn major keys to stop coming up short on your goals and start leveling up for the type of lifestyle you desire. Ready to level up? Let's do it. All right, you all. So, welcome to our new listeners and welcome back to our OG listeners who tune in weekly. We have a special guest for today's episode. My guest name is Miss Alease Young, and we are actually old co-workers together. We worked at a school together a couple years ago. We didn't work, closely together, but I do remember seeing Miss Young in the hallway. She always seemed so nice and gentle, and the kids seemed to respond to her well. So I'm very excited to speak with her. Ms. Young is an elementary school counselor. She has a master's in Christian counseling, a master's in school counseling, as well as in educational leadership. So Ms. Young definitely knows her stuff. And specifically for today's topic, which the title is The Power of Generational Patterns. And I named it this. I didn't want to say generational curses or things like that because I feel like things that are passed down generationally can go either way. They can be positive things or they can be negative things. So we'll definitely jump into that today. So Miss Young, to jump right in, what is generational patterns to you? What does that mean to you, or what does that look like to you? And how can someone identify generational patterns that they may currently deal with?
Um, I love the question. So, first of all, I love that you said that generational patterns can be, a positive or it can be a negative. Because I think we tend to focus a lot more on generational patterns that are negative and overlook the positive ones, right? And they're powerful. Ultimately, the positive patterns that we have can become legacy builders, right? The stuff that
Yeah.
we can learn in a positive way can be that foundation to building or creating legacy within our families. But for the most case, generational patterns, we usually look at the negative traits that seem to um, pass down, if I can say it in such a way where it almost seems like it's going through the bloodline in essence. So it's going from generation to generation to generation. Um, and in most cases you can see it, and it's almost a natural pattern. Like, for
Right.
example, if I look at my life and being transparent in this moment, there was a generational pattern that was definitely happening. My grandmother had two children, never married. My mom had two children, never married. So that would be the very huge beginnings of a generational pattern. And for me, I broke that particular pattern, not in a way that I'm married and have children, but no children, not married at this point. But it was a cycle where I was confident that I wanted to be married and have children, or I'd rather not have it at all, you know. So it was that natural progression that just happened, but it could have continued if there wasn't a decision in myself.
Right. For sure. So, and I will say I can identify with that too. So, as far as me and my family, um, the women would, get married, but there was something where teen pregnancy, that was a generational pattern in my family. So my mom was originally adopted by my grandmother, who I grew up with knowing was my grandma, but her biological mom was a teenager when she had her, and she was unable to take care of her. So she, my grandmother that I grew up with took her in. But that was something that my mom struggled with up until this day, and she's in her like mid 60s, because her biological mom had eight other children that seven of them she did raise on her own. Two, including my mom, were given away. So that was, and then I had my son young. My sister had her kids early and young. So that was the pattern there. So I definitely can relate to that.
Mhm.
All right. So I know I originally reached out to speak to you based off your feedback from the Kirk Franklin's documentary Father's Day. So you had did a live where you were sharing your thoughts on his mom's response. So if you have not seen that documentary, this will be a spoiler alert for you. But can you just kind of share, like, what were your thoughts on how his mom reacted to the news? And you can give a little backdrop of what happened in the documentary for those who may not have seen it, just to kind of help people understand where we're coming from on that topic.
Yeah. So yeah, I watched the documentary and I'm like you, by now, if you haven't watched it, I'm gonna spoil it. At
Right.
first, when I was talking about it, I'm gonna spoil it. But now, if you haven't watched it, it's on you. You had plenty enough time. But when I watched the video, first of all, I was in tears when I watched the video the very first time. I've watched it after that, but the very first time, just raw reaction, I was literally in tears. I understood
Yeah.
um, to some extent that fatherlessness that he was speaking about, because I do not have that relationship with my own father, unfortunately. And one part of the video, if you can recall, and I didn't recall it the first time, but watching it over, when Kirk makes a comment about, I would give up all these trophies just to be somebody's
Mhm.
son. Man, that hits me, because I would give up so many things just to be called my father's daughter, just to hear that
Yeah.
particular comment. But the rawness of the video was powerful to me. To When you speak of the generational patterns, just jumping back to that in the video, when you see Kirk's response to the DNA test that he gets from his father, it's emotional. He's crying. When the dad sees the video, I mean, excuse me, when the dad gets the responses in the video that he is the father, the dad immediately, generational pattern, begins to cry. And then when Kirk tells Carry his son, about, you got a grandfather, you've been wanting one and you got one. Carry
Mhm.
immediately, in the same way, is in tears and emotional. That is a generational pattern from men, that did not have that
Mhm.
relationship, but they both responded in that same emotional sense. But going back to the mom, and that was one of the first places I landed, was when I heard her denial of of the test 2 times when she rejected, literally said the words, I reject the test. I was in shock. But then what my mind went to immediately, and then I was listening to other commentators talk about it, was she's not telling her story.
Mhm.
She for whatever reason, she is holding on to whatever this particular secret is, and she will not tell it. And that connected with me specifically because in 2014, my mom passed away from pancreatic cancer. And there are some things that I now just won't know because she kept so many secrets. Um, and I'm not sure why, but and I've asked on more than one occasion, just some questions, and she would just not talk about it. So seeing that pattern and knowing that Kirk is pretty much about my age, it made me say, is it something generational? Is it something in that generation? Because his mom has to be about what my mom's age would be to some extent. Is it just something in that generation where we have been taught culturally to hold on to certain secrets, to not tell, um, and why we do that. Like, and I don't have a full answer for it, but I wish I did. I wish I did so that we could be able to break that cycle for those that are not, telling it. But hopefully for us in our next generation, we won't hold back. We'll tell the truth. But it's some kind of trauma is my thought in her past. Something about that situation that she does not want to reveal, doesn't want to talk about it, or doesn't know if she even has the emotional capacity to handle what that conversation would look like.
Yes, I found that very interesting too. And especially like you said, it was the two times for me because the first time I was like, okay, whatever, it made me think about, I don't know if you're familiar with that show, Maury, where they have like the paternity test and they're like in denial, like, no, you are the father, you are the father. So it kind of felt like that to me, like, no, that's not true. We need to do it again. And everyone complied and did it again. And then that second time when she was at the facility with the test
Mm-hmm.
results and still denied it, my immediate thought as well was trauma and a secret or something that she's hiding, because now I'm wondering, well, how did they get together? Or was
Right.
there a reason they weren't supposed to be together? So she is trying to, cover that and hide that. So I definitely can relate. And I don't know, I don't want to be what's the word? Biased and say like in black families that happens, but I'm just speaking from, my experience.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like in the black household, especially when you think back to slavery and the Civil War time, like people were taught to keep secrets for safety for certain things, or it was looked at as like a safety net. And maybe it just has spilled over into all areas of their lives where they just don't tell anything. um, and people have to deal with that pain or that hurt of the unknown, as they move forward. But I will say,
Mm-hmm.
as far as like the unknown and sharing, my husband shared something with me recently where it was like, if you want to know who you are, then, study your parents, find out their generational habits, their patterns, or whatever, and it can point to who you are. So when our parents are silent about things that they've dealt with and we don't know their story and their histories, a lot of times that means we don't know who we are or why we do some of the things that we do. Um, and I can say also too, like I can see patterns and things that I do, as well as my husband. He didn't grow up with his father, but the times that I've met his father, I see a lot of similarities, and they did not have a relationship. So that generational pattern runs deep in our DNA. You don't have to be around the person to pick up on those things. It's just in you,
Right, right.
for
Yeah, you
sure.
don't have to necessarily be there. It flows down through the bloodline for sure.
Yes, and it even makes me think of some biblical families. I know specifically. who is it? David, King David, where, the one who killed Goliath, and how with his family, he was the least. And his family, his father didn't really pay attention to him or didn't really think much of him. And then when he became a father, it was just like he let the reins loose completely, and, just kind of let his family or his children do whatever, because he didn't want to mimic the pattern of his father. So it really can go either way, but it still stems from an experience or that generational pattern that you dealt with.
Right.
And there's some other biblical people I can't think of right now. I know Moses, Abraham, if you look at the trajectory of their family, there's a lot of generational patterns that they have dealt with.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So I like that
All
you brought
right,
up David because you see those patterns in his life. So yeah, definitely, I connect with that.
for sure. All right, what advice would you give to someone who wants to change the trajectory of unhealthy patterns in their family, but they're just not sure where to start or what that would look like?
Yeah, I think that that's probably the most powerful question to embrace because um, you're going to have to be a trailblazer in many cases. You're going to have to be willing to be misunderstood in certain situations, kind of like what we saw in Kirk's video when he
Hmm.
had to confront his mom on that particular day. She's rejecting the results a second time, and she is intentionally, in my mind, when I watched it a couple of times later, she was intentionally using her motions because I think she thought in that moment, I'm rejecting these results. Kirk's back, he, if you watch the video again, he literally turns his back to her at that point. And so she's using her emotions because I think she thought her emotionality would make him turn the
Hmm.
chair and not
Hmm.
cast her away. And so she was saying, so I'm going to lose you. And even her sister is saying to her, he just wants the truth. You got somebody that's there and you're not willing to move forward. And so for Kirk, he had to do something that was hurting him because he didn't just want a father, he wanted a mother and a father, and he was kind of clear about that. And in order for him to break this particular pattern, which was the lies and the secrets, he had to literally turn his back to her and say, yes, this is what it means. It means you can't have me if you can't tell me the truth. So if you want to break, and we're looking on the negative side of the generational patterns, then the first thing is you have to identify what you see. And then second, you have to be able um, to stand in a place where you're going to be misunderstood. You're going to have to be able to
Yeah.
stand in a place where you're going to have to make a stand. You know what I mean? So you're standing in a place where you're going to have to make a stand to say that this is what I want. And if you can't meet that expectation, if you can't meet me here so we can have the proper conversations, then yes, you're going to lose me. So you have to be willing even to take a loss, and that's hard because we're like, I don't want to do this and lose, but you have to be willing to take a loss in order to meet the level of expectation. But also, I will say, if you take the loss, you have to be willing to venture into it at a later time. Because one of the things that I
Yeah.
know from my brother and I that we experienced was we wanted relationship with different people, with our fathers. And that was a struggle for my mom that unfortunately we weren't able to overcome. But one of our issues with her was to say, you made the decision for you, but you can't make the decision for us.
Right. Right.
So, you
Yes,
may
I
have to be
can
willing to let
relate to
your
that.
child know that. You know what I mean? Like, okay, if you want to walk down the path, I'll go with you. But for me, I'm still going to hold my same expectation. But if you need to have it, I can't deny it for you, is what I'm saying.
Yes, I definitely can relate to that so much, Miss Young. especially I would say in my family, I feel like I've been the one who was just like that light bulb came on. And I will say too, for me, I think getting outside of that environment kind of helped me to see, like, okay, some things are not really that healthy here.
Yeah,
Just having
yeah.
conversations with other people or that exposure, reading books, just finding out information on family and generations. Um, Iyanla Van Zant, I watched a lot of her shows and I noticed the pattern. And everybody that she would talk to, she would ask about their parents. She would ask about their relationship with their parents. And there was always a connection to what they were going through and the families, what they were going through. So I
Hmm.
started to apply that to my life. And in no way am I minimizing therapy because I do attend therapy. But I will say for people that don't have the financial resources, if you pay attention, to some of the information that's out there, you can kind of, pinpoint stuff. And I will say I started doing that in my early 20s, noticing that pattern before I even thought about, actual therapy. Um, but that is definitely something, a risk that you have to take. Unfortunately, that's something I've had to accept that, my family has not accepted the change that I have made, certain boundaries that I've put in place, certain requests that I've put in place in this newfound space that I'm in. They have not, respected that. So as a result, we don't have a relationship. And as much as that breaks my heart, I have to think about the pain that I face trying to force or fix them to, see my side or see how they're hurting me or see the unhealthiness in it. So I just choose, my peace and to put my boundaries in place to protect me from that. And like you said, I know a lot of people brag about, generational curses and breaking them, but there's a lot of ugly work that goes in on the other side of it that people don't talk about. It's not always as fun or liberating as people make it. Your feelings are hurt. You do experience grief and loss if you have to end certain relationships, especially with close people, your parents, your siblings. Like, those are supposed to be your, blood thicker than water people, but that's not the case for everybody. And that is
Right.
painful.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
sure.
And I like that
All
you
right.
said the traveling, going and seeing things differently does help
Yeah.
you get that view. Um, So for some people, it's not to say if you, let's say you don't travel. So you're saying if I don't travel, if I don't see different things, I'll never see it. No, you will. But the vastness of your experience by traveling and going in different places and doing things differently opens your eyes a
Yes.
lot quicker to see that there's a big world out there, and there are different ways to do things. And when you start to, as you said, when you start to look at the patterns of other lives and you're like, well, wait a minute, that's how they did that? They were thinking this way, they started acting this way, and you start to see and you make the adjustment. So you don't necessarily have to travel all over, but start opening your eyes to new ways and new thoughts. If you think the same thoughts and you see things the same way, you're going to get the same results. But if you want to
Mhm.
do something different, if you're feeling that, then you're going to have to do things differently in order to really have that experience. Um, but I will say, traveling and moving, stuff like that, and learning how to do it. Once you know how to do it, what you do start to learn is a new resiliency in yourself. Be like, if I did that, I can do anything. Like the first time I
Yes.
moved to Vegas, and then I moved back to New Jersey, and then when I was moving down here, this was easy. Like I know how to move. I've done that before. It creates a
Yeah.
resiliency in yourself.
It's so amazing that you said that. I went on a Jamaica trip. It was a girls' trip 2 years ago. And the excursions that we did, I left feeling that way. Like, if I can do this, I can do anything. We were climbing waterfalls. I went scuba diving, like all these things that I would never
Right.
see
Right.
myself doing. And specifically that waterfall, because the way we had to walk up, it was like we had to hold each other's hands. And I was just like, how in the world are we about to do like I was so doubtful, but we did it.
Right,
We finished it. And I
right.
was like, you know what? That's a life lesson right there. God is speaking to me like, if I can do this, I can do anything. And of course, and I would say that with, the whole generational patterns, looking at it can be intimidating when you see the list of all the things that your family is dealing with or that has been passed to you. It can be intimidating. Like, I'm just one person. I can't overcome all this stuff, but just one day at a time, one step at a time. And I'm a big believer, like, whatever I don't get, I pray that I plant the seeds in my children and that they get it and that they
Right,
can connect with people to water what I was not able to water so that they can grow. Because I will
right,
say, too, despite, my situation with my parents, I feel like they did what they could with what they had. But I'm a strong believer that God connects us with who we need for the journey that we're on. It's just up to us to receive. There are countless women who have been put in my life who are like mother figures to me, or have spoken to me or guided me in a way that my mom wasn't able to, but I'm grateful that I was connected to those women so that they could. So I'm a firm believer in
right.
that as well. All right. And
Absolutely,
in
I agree.
conclusion,
Mhm.
how can we be intentional about creating those healthy generational patterns in our family today?
I think ultimately when we say, be intentional, it means being what I call purpose driven. Knowing what that
Mm,
goal is, set your goal, set what it is that you want to create, and then you are purposefully going towards that. Um, Being biblical, and I know it speaks to patriarchy, but I'm going to take it and make it, dual here. But it talks about how children are an arrow in the quiver. In other words, talking about like the bow and arrow and the thing that you hold your arrows in. So children
mhm,
are like the arrows in your quiver. So the more arrows you have, the bigger your quiver, the more, blessed you are, is what the Bible was saying. But when you think about an arrow, when you think about what you're doing, you have to be intentional with that arrow. So you're shooting it to hit a particular mark. And so what you're doing in you are creating intentionally patterns that you are really now taking your quiver out of your bow and shooting a mark for your children to go after. So
yeah.
if I want to break a particular cycle in my family pattern, then I want to intentionally set up my actions and the things that we do so that I am now
Mhm.
taking my arrow out of my quiver and shooting it intentionally for my children to reach it as well. So you're laying down that foundation. So you have to be intentional. You got to level it out. You got to make sure that it's sure and firm. So that takes intentional steps every single day. Not that, not all of a sudden everything is going to be perfect. There's going to be trials,
Right.
there's going to be ups, and there's going to be down. But you get right back on track. You get right back on track. It's just
Yeah.
like, if I can say, if it's just like fasting. That's the one of the hardest things for me to do, spiritual discipline wise. But one of the things I learned was, if I blow fasting that day, don't beat yourself up and don't fast anymore.
Yeah.
I messed up.
Right.
I realize I messed up. I'm gonna start my fast again tomorrow. And you jump back on the wagon again, because, and ultimately, I'm going back. I'm sorry I didn't finish that sentence, because you don't want to give up. And you want to then show a pattern to your children as well. We're not quitting. We don't stop. Yes, we
Yes.
might mess up, but we get back on and we try this thing again. Because I feel, and I say this a lot of times even to my students, everybody wants magic tricks. Everybody wants everything to be like, I wave a wand and all is well. No, it takes
Mhm.
work. What you have to do every day is going to take work. And we need to definitely show our children that it takes work. You mess up, you get back up and you try again. That didn't work this time. Okay, now I know what doesn't work. Let me try again. Let me try another pattern, until we get it, and then we can show them that exact ability to overcome. So the intentionality means not perfection, but not quitting. So it's that resiliency, it's that ability to keep it going.
Yes, Ms. Young, you just summed up my two life mottos with what you just shared there. So one is progress over perfection. I'm really big on that. No such thing as being a perfect parent or perfect anything, but we are just trying to progress daily. And the other quote that I live by is don't be afraid to fail, be afraid not to try. So you just sum that up with what you explained there, because it is going to be a daily task. It is going to be a consistent thing that you have to show up for. I know specifically for parenting, I have my moments of frustration where I lose it. I apologize, I regroup, and we're right back at it, trying again the next day. So, and I hope that my children learn from that pattern. Like, okay, my mom does apologize to me. My mom does try again when she messes up. My mom does acknowledge her shortcomings, so it's okay for me to fall short, and we'll just figure this thing out together. So those are things and messages that I pray that my children are getting from our relationship.
Yeah, amen. I agree with that. Absolutely.
Yeah. So Miss Young, this was so great, such a great conversation. I appreciate you for speaking with me tonight. Is there any way that people can connect with you in your business or your services or what you have to offer?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you can find me on Facebook. My name is Alease Young if you find me on my personal page. But I also do have a ministry page called Still Small Voice. And what I've been doing, actually, I started this during the pandemic, doing these Friday night lives when we were stuck in the house and just having
Yeah.
various conversations and things of that nature. Now I've kind of pulled it back since we're back to work and all of that. So I do a Monday through Friday, like a quick five, maximum I think I've ever done is 6 or 7 minutes of a morning inspirational kind of message talking about something biblical, something mental health, or just something that I just had to react to. Um, so you can find me at Still Small Voice, uh, Facebook page, Still Small Voice Ministry, and on YouTube at Still Small Voice Blog. And I do have a website, which is www.smallvoice.net. And and my ultimate goal with the title of the ministry, Still Small Voice, is connected to the small voice that Elijah experienced, where God was not in all the big loud stuff, but in a still small voice, he turned Elijah around and sent him back so that he could live in purpose and on purpose. So my ultimate goal is just to inform, inspire, equip, hoping that I'm encouraging people in some kind of way to keep on pressing, keep on doing, keep on, being ready for whatever God has set
Yeah.
and destined for your life. So those are ways that you can meet me, and I pray if there's anything that I can do to help anybody, please let me know.
Yes, and I will have all of that information in the show notes on both the podcast notes and the YouTube platform as well. Be sure to tune in. Like I said, that's how I got connected with her. I tapped in one day. I said, "Let me see what Miss Young talking about," and it blessed me. So thank you again for coming to speak with me. Thank you all for tuning in for tonight's episode, and I pray that you all have a great night. Talk to you soon. Thank you,
Thank you.
Miss Elise.
See ya.